It's time that I pull this Hemi out and we start like attempting to build it. And the other four are in. That is all 8 in the engine block. This is our budget 5.7 Hemi coming together right now. Should be capable of 1,000 horsepower for easy. Twin true turbo 69mm turbos. We'll pull this thing out. I don't think it should take too much time, but you know how things go like that. We're gonna dive into the Hemi world, hopefully make 1,000 horsepower with it. The LS world has been done so many times. It's just Gen 4 block, gapped rings, camshaft, make 1,000 horsepower. Gen 3 Hemi world, not really sure. Let's dive into this one. Oh yeah, we got a lift now, so the car is in the air. I wanna mainly work on getting stuff out of the trunk. That big piece of plate in the back I can actually use for something because we have the ARC droid over there. Let this down and show you what it looks like. It's been a while since we worked on this car. Look, a wrench.
Ooh, a piece of candy.
What size is that? 1/4 inch. This is the part I'm concerned about. Is that this plate under the fuel tank, really heavy. We've got wastegates. Those might be like the 1940s. Oh my God, I get to get the bolts from the bottom this time. I love it. They like rib nutted bolts and then put nuts on the bottom of them. All right, fuel tank should be able to come out now. Maybe. How'd they even get this in here? I just gotta get this plate out first. One more. I'm having so much fun! This is fun. All right, here's the giant plate I'm talking about. Everything here, up there, back around, and then this side is all 1/8 inch thick. So this big, I gotta cut the sealant off it, but we'll get that plate up, see how much it weighs. I also had the fuel tank out, I just had to pull it out a different way. All right, cut some sealant. Oh yeah, some weight to that one. So all my clothes on, stuff in my pockets and stuff. 194.2. And now I'll do with our big plate in our hand. 216.2. So 22 pounds is what this plate weighs. 22 pounds! Quick way to lose 22 pounds. We won't exactly lose 22 pounds because we're probably gonna put a bigger fuel tank in the back and we have to build a chute mount and stuff, but we can do that plate out of aluminum, I think, instead of steel. I believe this piece of angle iron in the back too is also like 3/16 steel too. So we can get rid of that, get rid of a bit more weight, and then start fresh in the back here and design a new fuel system. But mainly all this had to come out anyways because the 8.8 has to come out. We're going 9 inch and the torque boxes have to come out. I know I hated doing torque boxes the first time, but we have a lift now and we have some torque boxes here. I've debated what I should do. And I think it's time that I pull this Hemi out and we start like attempting to build it. So at least if we get it out and on a stand, it's there. We can start taking stuff off it, take the cylinder heads off, crank out, start doing what we need to do. But at least we'll start progressing. And then once the motor goes back in, it'll be in the final time. And I think that'll be the push. So get this down, get the engine out, find a place to put all the parts, maybe in the trunk that has no floor in it anymore, and figure it out from there. You'll notice that my face is all like red and stuff. I was doing some handstand push-ups at the gym and I think I broke some blood vessels in my face. And my eyes got all swollen. It was weird. Almost died. Well, the motor is out. Now we just gotta get the crank out, the pistons, the rods, all the timing components, and then rebuild it back better. Very nice.
It's very nice.
This is my favorite part though. Stick shift, baby. Oh yeah, dingly ball hone. I even got a squirt bottle for my oil. I didn't film pulling the crank out because, you know, people showed up, but get some hone through here. I'm just gonna do a light hone because this is a very low mile block, but I just wanna get like the surface imperfection off it. So you oil this thing all the way up. Go, oil up the cylinder. You don't want any of these balls not oiled. And then, there we go, that's all we want. Quick little home jobby. Sick. Sick. So much stoke. Okay, we spent some time cleaning up the surfaces on the block, mainly right around where the head gasket would seal the cylinder. We also cleaned out the cylinders a little bit with some ATF and whatnot. They still need one last go over, but we're gonna start doing our rings now. All our pistons are assembled over there. We'll do our rings. I ordered some micrometers and some stuff to measure like bearing clearances on the rods, so that'll show up soon. But in the meantime, we'll get the rings done, ready to go on the pistons, get the clearances for the rods, put those in. Then we'll put our Flying Ryan Performance camshaft in there. We'll get the short block all buttoned up. It'd be nice. We're just gonna move the rods out of the way real quick and then use this area for the piston rings. So we mark the rods. Our piston ring filer, our piston rings, and a set of feeler gauges. And then I also use a piston with just the top ring down on the oil groove down here to press the rings down evenly in the bore. It might not go down quite deep enough, but that's the best I have to work with right now. So that's what we're gonna use. Start on number one, get our top ring and our bottom ring done. I think something around 30 thousandths is probably what we're aiming for. And then I'll just put them over here and mark it number 1, 3, 5, 7, you know, odd numbers, 1, 3, 5, 7. Makes sense, right? I had to think about what came after 3 and before 7, by the way. Just little space cake right now. Top ring, bottom ring, the oiling scraper thingamajiggers over here. So number 1, take one of these, jam that into the block. Use that to push it down. Right out of the packaging, we are 8 fit in there. Nope. So we need to be at 30 thousandths, and it currently does not fit 8. So we've got a little bit of filing to do. I should mount this to my bench. And by mount it to my bench, all I'm gonna do is mount it. Pull that ring out. We're just gonna grind from one side. I'm gonna pick this left side just because I can see it better. And I don't know how strong these rings are, so I'm just gonna go a little bit at a time. I'm gonna get a file real quick. Deeper those edges before I put it back in the bore so we don't scratch anything up. Small little file. Turn around. It's much easier for me because I just have to spin on this chair. Put that back in the bore, push that back down. Here's our 8 thousandths, and it still doesn't really fit in there. It fits in more than it did before, but we've definitely got a little bit of filing to do. Oh, it's in there a little bit. That little gap right on the top of the ring up there, it's a little bit off center because I pressed it just now, but that is what we're trying to measure. And that's gotta be 30 thousandths on our top ring, or we're going like 28 to 30 thousandths, and then 30 thousandths on the bottom ring. All kinds of fun stuff. So I'm gonna repeat that process. I'm gonna take it out, grind down the one side a little tiny bit, put it back in, measure it, and then as I go on, I'll probably be able to guesstimate how many rotations I need to get where I want to be. Like 5 rotations is like 3 thousandths or something. And it'll make the process much easier, but slow and steady right now. Put my music in. Enjoy your time out in the garage because it's not gonna last forever, because eventually your wife's gonna be like, oh, come inside, make love to me, ooh. And then you'll have to go inside. So make the best of your time and have fun doing Hemi stuff. It's the way of the future. So the top ring is actually a lot harder material than like the secondary ring, I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that. Just from experience, I think that's what it is. This one took so long to do. I must have pulled it out of here at least 10 times, but we're at our 28 thousandths right now. So 28 thousandths slides in there pretty good. And then 30 thousandths doesn't slide in there, so I'm gonna call that good. Bottom one's gonna get 30 thousandths, and then we'll move on to the next one. I'm thinking I can just leave the rings in here. It might be easier to keep track of them if I just leave them in the block. It's getting lots of boost though. Actually, manufacturer specs here. So if you do it out, bore size times 0.007, it ends up being something like 27.5 thousandths. So I went 28, a little bit bigger than 28. So I'd rather have it too big and then have a little bit of safety built into it versus too small and then it pinches and you ruin a piston. Let's take it out. Second ring. Time for a poop. Okay, all the rings are in here, both sides. I just left them in the cylinders that they went to. We can't put the rings on the rods until we figure out the bearing clearances on the rod bearings. Then we can put the crank in this thing, put the rods and pistons in with the rings, and that is basically the short block. The hard part of the short block. The timing might be a little bit difficult because I've never done it before, but it's only one single chain. And we've got to delete the little thingamajigger that makes it move, the VVT thing. Yeah. Also thanks to Greg Schmidt, because I was like 6 piston rings in. Like I had 6 cylinders done and I only have 4 piston rings left. He's like, why don't you just put a drill in there? And this made it, I don't know, like 2 times faster. Maybe even 3 times faster. Maybe even 3.5 times faster. Probably 4 times faster. All right, been a couple days. Hemi Fox still in progress. Got a couple tools here. Got a micrometer set and a dial bore gauge. These are just a couple of things I'm gonna use to measure the bearing clearances. I didn't have them before. And if things come in cute little boxes like this from Amazon, typically I'll buy it. Just, it's nice to have on the shelf. It's fairly inexpensive and I'm hoping that it's gonna be close enough for what we need. So we're gonna get the big crank over there, up here, measure the journals, use this to measure the inside of the rods, and then see if our bearing clearances are good. And, oh yeah, big ol' Hemi crank. Rods are obviously gonna be the ones on the end of like the counterweights here. So clean those off. Get some measurements there. P.S. I actually don't know what I'm doing really. This is the first time I've measured crank journals like ever. So it's gonna be interesting. So the caliper is just to tell me which one I'm gonna use. So it's more than 2 inches. So we need one that's between 2 and 3. All right, here goes nothing. I know I'm not the smartest cookie in the crumble, but at least the cookie crumbles still. All right, figure out how to read these things again now. So this is what I've got. You guys can tell me if I'm stupid or not, but it looks like 7. I forgot how to read these. They don't tell you how to read it in there. So it's gonna be 2.1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those have to be 0.2, right? 2, and then 7, I think. 7? Question mark? 2, 7, 7? 2.1277? I don't know. Let me just look up what an actual bearing is supposed to be on a 5.7 crank. So I use Google a lot. 5.7 crank, bearing. Okay, I'm just gonna look up a video on how to read a micrometer again. 1 second. I haven't actually read a micrometer since I did automotive schooling in 2009. That's when the last time I read one was. So it's been over 10 years. Probably time to get familiar with it again. I don't need an 11-minute video to learn how to read a micrometer though. So this is what we have on the journal. That was the journal here. So we have 1 there, so it's gonna be 2.1 at least. But we have another dash there, so that's 2.125. Plus we have a line here, which makes it 2.6. And then we have to follow the lines across the top until the lines match up, which is on the 6 or 7 there. So it's gonna end up being 2.1267. 2.1267. That's what our journal is. I'm gonna measure all the journals, just make sure they're all the same numbers or relatively close, and then we're gonna do our rods, and then we'll compare them. Just learning as I go, because like the next time that I do something like this, it's gonna be handy to have those clearances. I have assembled a couple of LS engines before, but we just reused the same bearing, so we never really checked the bearing clearances. In this case, this is brand new rod bearings going in it, so instead of just tossing the rod bearings in and guessing that they're okay, we're just gonna measure them and make sure they're okay. Interesting, my rod bearings came like this, both in a different pack. I'm going to assume that one is probably like the top side of the rod and one's the bottom side of the rod. I'm definitely going to confirm to check, but what we need to do now is we need to put our bearings inside of our rods, torque them down, and then measure the inside, what the bearing is, compared to what our crank measured out at, and then we'll get the clearance on the rod bearings. All right, time to put some bearings in our rods. So this took a lot of effort to actually break these bolts off. All right, time to put some bearings in these rods. Any second. There we go. Now, we have two different bearings. I don't recall which one is undersized or oversized, but I believe you have to take one of each bearings and pair them up. So this gives you an extra thousands clearance over factory bearings, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Tang goes to tang. So we're gonna put these bearings on the top, the yellow bearings on top. And I don't remember if it goes tang to tang or not now. Let me go grab another rod. It does go tang to tang. So the tang portion here that holds the bearing on that side will match up with the tang portion on this side. To further help that, I guess there's markings on this side to match them up. Now this goes to the vise. It gets the torque unit on it. Now, technically, if I set this thing up correctly, well, those little wheel things are in the way. Brutal. Oh, I can get rid of this piece. So according to this, we're at 28 thousandths, I think. All right, so the way I have this set up, it's probably a little bit weird, but what I did is this is basically our crank journal. I set that up. I put our dial gauge in there and I zeroed it out. So anything off of zero on this is our bearing clearance. So I have 28 thousandths on our first one, which I don't know if it's good or not, but I'm about to find out. All right, so I set it up better, but I'm still getting like 0.0004, only because my dial gauge, I didn't realize this beforehand, but the dial gauge only goes to the nearest like thousandth, where I need to be able to read in 10 thousandths. It's a really rough estimate, and I'm getting a number like this. 0.004. Better than it being the other way, like negative 0.004, where there's no clearance, because that would not be good. I got some figuring out to do now. Also, I think we figured it out as a team. U is upper, so this would be the upper bearing, this shinier one, and then this duller one says L on it, so we believe that's lower. So lower rod, upper rod. It'll look a little weird, but they do give you a notice that they're gonna look weird. All right, cleaning the block again, and you know, if it comes out like this, probably needs more scrubbing. So more scrubbing we're gonna do. I'm using some ATF. It does help clean all that grit out of the block, but as long as your white napkin's coming out like this, you still gotta clean. All right, we get to flip it back over. It's gonna go pretty quick, I think. Hands are clean. And we're just gonna go ahead and put the same bearings back in it because we know they worked. Low mile bearings, there's like 20,000 kilometers on those bearings. Three also has the thrust on it, so we gotta be mindful of that. And I have to look at a picture to see which thrust bearing was where. All right, found my picture. I guess the thrust only goes in one way. This one physically won't fit on the other side, pretty short. So I'm just gonna try it again just to make sure. No, it doesn't fit on that side, so it definitely only goes one way. Weird that they only use a half thrust here, and it's not connected to anything, but it is what it is. I borrowed Danny's fancy Mac Tools torque wrench because this one will do torque value, and then it will also do angle as well, is what we need for these stock bolts. Start inwards, 20 foot-pounds, go half and half on the bolt. Just gonna give it a quick couple taps back and forth to make sure that the thrust is seated in there. Mains are all tight. We just have to put our side bolts in our caps here. Now, one big difference I noticed between this engine and the LS engine is that these are actually bigger, but there's 4 of these in the LS, so there's 2 on each side, but these are bigger, and then they have the same side bolts in the caps as the LS, so hopefully it still spins. And it does. So, all right, side bolts, and then we get our pistons and rods ready to go in. I'm gonna flip it over. I know, it's a kind of a mess here. I'm just gonna sit down, I'm gonna do all the odd ones first. Rings on everything, bearings, put them all in, and then I'll do the evens after that. So move Dan's torque wrench so we don't ruin that. All right. Now if you've never used this style like piston ring compressor, this thing is a total game changer. Just fits in there, it's tapered, so when you put your piston in, you just kind of push it down through there, and there's no like ratcheting thing that you have to mess around with. So get our number 1 piston. We're gonna lube up the rings. I just put some oil in this bottle, so lube up the cylinder wall a little bit. It looks right because our valve relief, the big valve is up here where the intake would be. The intake valve's on top, exhaust valve's on the bottom. So I'll just start pressing that through. There we go. One piston in. Perfect.
Of course, I left the crank all the way down to the bottom on this one, but sure.
I just need to reiterate that I'm not perfect. And I know my measuring of the bearing clearances was not perfect either. So what I'm gonna do is I ordered some plastic gauge. It gets here tomorrow. So I'm gonna leave the lubrication off of the rod bearings. And we're just gonna put the cap on snug, get all our pistons and rods in here. And then when the plastic gauge shows up tomorrow, we're gonna check all our rod clearances. And that way I just feel more comfortable about what we just did. One piston in there. Goes down pretty far in the bore. Lots of power, baby. And the last one on this side going in. This tool just makes it so easy. That's the odd side. Time to do the even side now. Second set assembled.
Ooh, old school.
So basically all a plastic gauge is there's a little tiny piece of plastic in there. You cut off a piece, you put it in where the bearing is, and it's like a known thickness. So when you squish your bearing, you compare that known thickness to how far it squishes out, line it up with here, and it'll give you your like bearing clearance. So we're looking for something like 0.0024 or something like that. So we'll cut a piece of this off, put it in one of our rods here, torque that down to what it's supposed to be. Our rods are actually a torque value plus an angle. Then you pull the cap back off, check how far it's squished, and then clean that part off, put it back together. So we're gonna do that for all of them. None of these are actually torqued, they're just kind of put in there. I didn't put any lube on there in case it affected how much the squish got. Like I could have just slammed this together and hope for the best, but it's better just to have peace of mind and take an extra little bit of time to do this step versus just slamming it together. I didn't check the main bearings or anything like that, but that's because these were the ones that were in there running already, and I didn't need to check that clearance because it's just gonna be a factory clearance. And that is how small our piece of material is that gets squished in there. Make sure to put some ARP lube on the threads and the bottom side of the head. All right, we've got 30 pounds plus 60 degrees. Now we got to get the degrees. We just let this like calibrate itself. And now we add 60 degrees. And it says that was roughly 129 Newton meters. It's pretty tight. And then we pull it off. Whoa. Don't hit the car. Oh my God, I need to just like get on that side of the stand basically. Here we go. I can't get the cap off any other way, so I'm just wiggling it off with these pliers. And now we can basically measure the width of this plastic right there. We have to measure the width of that, and then that should give us our bearing clearance. It's a bit over the place, but for the most part, it's right around the 2000s. So, you know what? We got a clearance. I think we're okay. Now all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna push the rod down a little bit. We're gonna get some lube on that bearing in there, get some lube on our bearing for the outside, and torque that one down, and then move to the next one. Do that, all 8, and then we should be good to go. Just out here bobbing. It's wintertime, so you know what? I gotta keep myself busy. Well, last one, did all our checks, everything checked out, you know, pretty close, so I'm gonna trust that it's good, and if not, then we explode it up, and we get another one, so no harm, no foul. But if we were to spend money at the machine shop, that would kind of defeat the purpose of doing a budget build, wouldn't it? So that's what we're going for here. I don't have a rod stretch gauge, but what I did was I did my angle to my torque, and on this torque wrench specifically, it tells you your foot-pounds after you've done torquing it. So it's right around 90 foot-pounds. I just went ahead and did all the other ones at 90 foot-pounds. Gonna be my best bet, I think. But that's it for our rotating assembly, which is huge for our Hemi Fox progress right now. I think that's where we're gonna leave it now. The Hemi Fox is coming along. I'm hoping that this 5.7 will likely be the future of like budget builds. Like not everyone has to do an LS. You could pick up a 5.7 Hemi, just throw a set of pistons and rods in it and make just as much or more power than an LS engine. Obviously you still have to do the camshaft, the valve springs and stuff like that, but a set of pistons and rods were like $2,000 US. It wasn't too bad. So I'm gonna come out here tomorrow. I'm gonna get the cylinder heads cleaned. I'm gonna put the new valve springs and stuff in that. We're gonna get our camshaft in here. We're gonna get the whole long block assembled, hopefully. We might need a couple of gaskets, so it might take a couple days. But yeah, we get this thing all buttoned up. We'll get the clutch put on this thing. We'll get the transmission put on this thing, slam it back in the car, and then nothing has to come back out in order to fire this thing up again. And that's what I'm most excited about. We're on a time crunch. This needs to be done by spring. This needs to be done by spring. So you'll be seeing a lot more of me. Peace easy, get that V.